Welcome back to Pop Dissected. Today, we're going to be discussing Madonna's decline of the 2010s and what has missed the mark with her most recent records, Rebel Heart and Madam X. Can she recover? Now, don't get me wrong, Madonna has had and still has an amazing career. She's phenomenal. She's been in the industry since the 80s and has still brought moderate success into the 2010s. Madonna pioneered not only the music industry, but also paved the way for arguably all-female modern artists in our industry. Madonna set the stage for what it meant to be a woman in the industry, what it meant to perform, how to make music videos, how to create music, how to tell stories in your music. Madonna's success and influence as a woman and an icon of pop culture cannot be understated. So I want to get that out of the way first and foremost, so everyone knows I'm not trying to erase nor discredit what Madonna has done for music. But it seems, beginning with Madonna's 13th record, Rebel Heart, and most recently, Madam X, she's been losing the relevance and punch she had as recent as the mid-2000s. Is it as simple as she's just no longer relevant, or is there more going on than we know? Well, there's multiple factors, so let's figure it out. But before we begin, be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more future content on all your favorite pop stars. First, let's look at Madonna's chart history over the last 2 decades and try to pinpoint where things started to go wrong and what could be the cause of that. Briefly looking back in the 2000s, Madonna had some success over the decade with her singles. She earned herself a #1 with Music, 2 top 5 hits with 4 Minutes and Don't Tell Me, and an additional 2 top 10 hits with Hung Up and Die Another Day. However, this was across 4 records, and Die Another Day was actually from a soundtrack of a James Bond film. Out of 20 solo singles in the 2000s, 8 of them did not chart, and 7 of them were below the top 20. But even with her not raking in a ton of hits, all 4 of her records that decade peaked at #1 on the Billboard 200. Hard Candy, released April 19th of 2008, led to the Sticky and Sweet tour, Madonna's highest-grossing tour and the highest-grossing tour of a woman. So even without the massive success of singles, Madonna was still riding high this decade. She also earned 12 Grammy nominations and won 3 of them. But once we enter the 2010s, things start to take a wrong turn. First, there was a 4-year gap between the release of Hard Candy and MDNA. Now, Madonna has had a 4-year gap before. There was one between Bedtime Stories and Ray of Light. However, Ray of Light was a rebirth for Madonna. Following her controversial era with erotica and then trying to soften her image with Bedtime Stories, Ray of Light was the reinvention that reignited Madonna's entire career. It was a universally praised record, where she's commended for her change and direction in music. It is seen as one of the best pop albums of all time, and it is cited as being an influence into bringing electronica music into the mainstream. The record also, most importantly, helped carry a solidified relevance for Madonna in a new decade of artists, a decade filled with artists becoming marketed towards younger demographics. Now, I'm aware that was 1998 when Ray of Light was released, but even with that, it jump-started the success Madonna would carry in the 2000s, and though she hit a brief slump with American Life, she still ended the decade strong. Following the success of Hard Candy, Madonna would spend the next few years branching off into new ventures. Madonna would go to open her own fitness centers around the world, entitled Hard Candy Fitness. However, since then, most had been rebranded or closed. She additionally also launched her own fashion and clothing line. By 2011, Madonna confirmed she wanted to make more music, and she revealed she had been working with William Orbit, a producer she had worked on with Music. In an effort to combat the feeling that songs on the radio were too similar, Madonna would pursue a full pop and EDM direction with her record MDNA, which, when saying that out loud, doesn't exactly seem like a way to combat any type of sameness in pop music. Madonna stated her tracks she collaborated with Orbit were intended to be introspective, while the tracks she made with collaborator Martin Solveig were intended to be funny, ironic, and upbeat. MDNA would release March 23rd of 2012, producing 4 singles with only one of them charting. Give Me All Your Lovin' only peaked at #10 on the Hot 100, which is still fine. Despite this, MDNA debuted at #1 with 359,000 copies sold. However, the record had the largest second-week sales drop of the Nielsen SoundScan era, sales dropping 86.7%. The record was mixed to well-received. and this would start a critical shakiness of Madonna. Most prominently, the ballads were praised with their production, but the lyrics were heavily criticized and some felt the record was just aggressive. But let's think about the time. It's 2012. I've brought this up in many videos, but this was the emergence of the rise of Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Kesha, and even Taylor Swift to a degree. We also had other huge artists at the time, Pink, Rihanna. Lana Del Rey was also rising in the industry. Point is, the pop industry had its rulers. The 4-year wait for MDNA hurt Madonna first and foremost because so many artists had not only emerged, but artists already in the industry were reaching a new wave of success. Madonna was entering her 4th decade in the industry. The 2010s was a pop explosion, and Madonna would not be able to overpower these new artists who literally shaped the genre in the 2010s. This is a factor that actually contributes to the decline of Madonna's relevance. Now, MDNA was a success. It debuted at number 1. Madonna performed at the Super Bowl that year and set the viewership record for the time, and had a sold-out world tour. However, the tour would start to damage her public image. Now, Madonna has been known for controversy throughout her career, being wrapped up in scandals that were shocking for the time. But the controversies we're going to discuss later just seem a bit ridiculous and honestly avoidable for the most part. But anyway, with MDNA, Madonna wanted to go up against the music she felt had become homogenized, yet she released an EDM-driven record at a time where that was a dominant genre. It's similar to Christina Aguilera's Bionic. While of course the story of the records aren't the same, the sound of the record isn't envelope-pushing or necessarily forward-thinking for its time. And while MDNA may have been a personal new direction for Madonna, it wasn't a revolutionary sound. So now onto the MDNA tour. It was a sold-out tour, and it was well received. But it had controversy after controversy. And I think many of these controversies started making people disengage with Madonna and just get pissed off at her. In the first act of the show, Madonna used firearm props in her performances. Of course, I think it's easy to say why this is controversial. Especially with mass shootings and attacks in public places, having a prop firearm on stage is just not smart. Of course, some may argue that, of course it's just a prop, but one can't assume whether the gun will fire, whether there will be a projectile or a blank, etc. It isn't safe. And after the shooting in Aurora, Colorado, Madonna still used the firearm props, even when she performed in Denver, Colorado. And she was described as being dark and satanic. Yikes. Madonna was sued by an anti-gay Russian campaigner following a speech in support of gay rights. However, the claims were dismissed. Now, of course, Madonna was standing up for an important cause, so this isn't a big deal, but it still caused a fuss. Madonna exposed herself on stage in Istanbul. She was also criticized for apparently running an abbreviated set at a show in Paris. And likely most controversially, Madonna was threatened to be sued in France by projecting a swastika onto a far-right French politician during a video interlude. Now, while Madonna, for the most part, was bringing awareness to important issues that she felt mattered, the controversies, I think, bogged her down in one way. We can easily conclude many general audiences likely got tired of seeing Madonna wrapped up in controversy that, for the most part, did not need to happen. Madonna's 13th record, Rebel Heart, would officially set the stage for her decline. The record suffered from an abundance of collaborators that hindered the record's sonic cohesion, and the record also suffered from numerous leaks of tracks and their demos. A good handful of tracks became downloaded for the pre-order 3 months before the record would release, which in a way ruins the surprise. This record would be Madonna's first studio record since her debut to not have the lead single chart on the Hot 100. As a matter of fact, only one of the 4 singles would chart, Bitch I'm Madonna at 84. This would become Madonna's first record to not have a hit behind it, whether that hit be modest or one that has charted high. What's interesting is Rebel Heart was generally more well received than MDNA, some critics calling it her best effort of the decade. The highlights noted to be the record's production, even if there wasn't a specific cohesive sound. However, as I mentioned earlier with critical shakiness affecting Madonna, there were still criticisms of this record, most of them being noted the literal abuse of autotune for many of these vocals and a lot of the lyricism. And both of these points would be mentioned over and over again on Madam X. And of course, while both Rebel Heart and Madam X do have positive reception, The criticisms are just so big and very valid points, and I think they address things that a lot of people do feel about the record, which is another reason why they just are not performing as well. The criticisms are valid. But Rebel Heart would debut at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with 121 album equivalent units, and this would end Madonna's 5-record streak of having a number 1 album. Despite no hit singles and missing the top position on the Billboard 200, the Rebel Heart tour would go on to be sold out, grossing $169 million. However, the tour had a smaller overall gross and attendance compared to the MDNA World Tour. I think this can be attributed to the lack of a hit song to promote the record, and the record just not being as big. But of course, loyal Madonna fans and general music fans would still turn up for this queen. However, as with her previous tour, the Rebel Heart tour was plagued with controversies, further damaging Madonna's public image. Now, to touch on what I previously said, of course her fans and fans of music will still go to her shows, but I think generally speaking, all these controversies do have an effect on how people perceive someone. So while it doesn't mean everyone will turn against Madonna or start hating her, I think there still is an effect that significantly decreases public engagement. But anyway, in Brisbane, Madonna accidentally exposed a 17-year-old girl's breast. While the girl claimed it as the best time of her life, people were outraged Madonna made it a joke about sexual assault. I don't think I have to explain why this is a problem, right? There were many issues with Madonna arriving over 2 hours late to some shows, issues where attendees had invalid tickets, and plenty of instances of Madonna essentially appropriating the flag of the country she was performing in. Now, of course, you can see these issues however you like, but these are just not a good look for Madonna. Rebel Heart underperformed in comparison to MDNA. The tour was smaller, met with controversies, had no hit songs, and the record suffered from leaks. Additionally, MDNA failed on a commercial level to rival new pop giants that emerged. Yes, it had big first-week sales, but it just could not rival other artists. Thus, Rebel Heart couldn't do that. There was no momentum, and that leads us to today. Once more, we'd have to wait 4 years in between Rebel Heart and Madame X, which I don't have to explain why that's bad. Now, of course, Madonna was living her life in this period, so I'm not going to criticize her for that. Life should be a balance between living and work, but with the underwhelming success of Rebel Heart as a record, a 4-year period of waiting would only hurt Madonna's little momentum and the potential of the record. This time around, none of Madonna's singles off Madame X would chart on the Hot 100. However, the record would still reach number 1 on the Billboard 200, but only with 95,000 album equivalent units, in which 90,000 of those were pure sales. The decline between Madame X and Rebel Heart isn't as big between Rebel Heart and MDNA, but a decline is a decline. The fact most of Madame X's units were from pure sales is actually really interesting. We're in the age of streaming. It's not changing. Streaming for the most part is what drives songs and records to chart at this point. If you're not pulling in those numbers, pure sales will not help you alone. People just aren't buying as much music anymore because of streaming services. You either pay a one-time fee for a record or pay a monthly fee to listen to anything you want. I think the fact that Madonna didn't bring in huge streaming numbers is because she didn't have any warrant to. Madonna will always have her loyal fans, but she's found no way recently to appeal to a new generation who has grown up with and is growing up in a streaming era. Thus, she's not going to pull in those numbers. So without that streaming support, Madame X dropped to 77 the next week on the Billboard 200, a 95% sales drop with only 3,600 copies. The third week, the record fell off the Billboard 200. Now, Madame X received positive to mixed reviews. The vocals were once more plagued with atrocious auto-tune in many tracks and just odd lyricism choices. Now, Madame X is very much an art pop record. It's experimental in a lot of ways. With that, I don't believe it ever had the intent to be a huge chart-topping global phenomenon. This experimental nature was really the record's most prominent highlight from critics. And regardless of what you think of Madonna's music or how anything is charted, she definitely has a vision with every one of her records. We can definitely see that in Madame X, and it's also there in Rebel Heart, so I commend her for that. Madame X would still end up on several year-end lists for 2019. With the Madame X tour, Madonna opted for significantly smaller venues for the first time since her 1985 tour. And of course, the tour has been met with controversies, primarily for Madonna showing up hours late to multiple shows. Even the official starting time got pushed back to combat backlash. From reported numbers, Madonna is still selling out all these shows. However, I do have a sneaking suspicion these smaller venues are because of the commercial decline. Could she have bigger venues for this tour? We may never know. But with Rebel Heart being a commercial slump and Madame X falling even further than that, it only makes sense that Madonna would opt to do a significantly smaller tour she can sell out. What's next for Madonna? Coming from a Madonna fan, I think she has very much reached the peak of her career. She's bounced back from a few rocky points, but we've been witnessing a gradual decline in her commercial viability. Each record has had less charting singles, lower debut sales, a smaller tour, and a number of controversies with each of those tours. I don't know how Madonna would adapt to the current place music is in to generate massive commercial success. Rebel Heart may have missed the mark for that and sealed her fate. But we have to ask, does Madonna need to do anything at this point with her career? I can firmly say, I don't care if Madonna has a big single or a huge record cycle in the future. She doesn't need it. Madonna is the most influential woman in the music industry. Nearly every popular female artist has been influenced and inspired by Madonna. Adele, Ariana Grande, Avril Lavigne, Beyonce, Britney Spears, Dua Lipa, Gwen Stefani, Iggy Azalea, Jessie J, Katy Perry, Kesha, Kelly Clarkson, Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, Nicki Minaj, Pink, Rihanna, Selena Gomez, Sia, Taylor Swift. All these women have cited Madonna as an influence for them in one way or another, or others have noted how these artists have been inspired by Madonna. Madonna has made her mark in pop culture, in the music industry, and shifted history for women. She is the definition of an icon, the definition of impactful. She's got nothing to prove, and I don't think there's anything she can do to reinvigorate her career at this point, unfortunately. But through the struggles and the controversies, there is only one. There is only Madonna. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Comment down below what you think of Madonna's career and what you think should be the next steps for her. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more future content on all your favorite pop stars.